We're going to set up a secondary data archive and AF server. First, we'll run the PyServer install kit on PySRV02 and make sure we point Asset Framework at the SQL database we just set up on PySQL01. Because we're running it under the same servers account as the AF service on PySRV01, it should work right away. Next, we'll run the PyCollective Manager on PySRV01 and make a data archive collective out of PySRV01 and PySRV02. We'll let it copy our historical archives over to PySRV02, and our interface will automatically start fanning data, and it should all just work straight away. I reckon this is the coolest thing about the whole system. It doesn't matter how many interfaces and users we have, they all just start sending data to both servers or accessing both servers automatically. We just need to make sure that everything has network access to both the primary and the secondary, including any firewall ports that need to be open. And that's really it. After we configure the servers, we'll test both the data archive and the AF servers and see how they work. We're on PySRV02 and we're about to install the Py server. So open up Py install kits on the desktop and right click on the Py server install kit and run as administrator. We're clicking next and we're selecting every component. So note that PySRV02 is going to be our notification service. So it's going to be responsible for sending out emails that are configured to be associated with events and analysis. So it's also going to run calculations. We'll talk about moving these services off a little later in the course. We're going to change everything to be on D drive. Then next. Our SQL Server connection, just like for PySRV01, is going to be PySQL01, SQL Express. We do not want to install or execute the SQL scripts. They've already been installed and executed on PySQL01. Note that we don't have the choice to not validate the connection. We installed things in a very specific order because PyAnalysis service requires this connection validation to be installed properly. We don't get the option to not validate. Keep that in mind if you're installing a system yourself. Next, we need to point it at the license. In this class, we have a license already on the machine, but in real life, if you were installing a secondary server, you would need a license to temporarily install a bare bones Py server, and then afterwards it will copy the license off the primary. To set that up, you can download a license from our customer portal. Click the ellipsis, go into training license, and we should see pylicense.dat right there. Everything here is going to be on D drive. Additionally, in real life, you would change these archives and Q files to be on separate hard drives. In this training class, we only have a single hard drive media for all of our Py software. Click next. And here we're on the notification setup. The SMTP server in our configuration is actually installed on PySQL01, but if you're installing your own production system, you'll need to set up a local SMTP server and work with your IT department to make one available. If we had a PyVision server installed in our network, we'd put it down here. This would allow administrators to configure emails to be sent out with links to Vision displays. We'll leave this blank for now. For more details for these Vision displays, see our Asset Framework courses. We're going next. We need a certificate for RTQP and select the certificate that's already been provided to us by our IT department. Next, we need to type in our service accounts. Note the different accounts next to the different services. These all need to be correct. These group managed service accounts will only let you run specific services on specific machines. This looks pretty good to me. We're going to install. Okay, we have our server installed. the first thing we're going to do is see if our asset framework server works. Asset framework, really the way we've set it up here, requires no extra setup. So we're going to close this out and simply open up PySystem Explorer. PySystem Explorer will connect to the default AF server. In this case, the default AF server is PySRV02. And note we're already connected to the development database. Because we installed Asset Framework Server pointing at the same backend as our PySRV01, it has the same configuration. That development database we created when we connected up at the end of the last video, it's here as well, even though it says we're connecting to PySRV02. Okay, so we're going to leave that there, but we're going to connect as a client would. Now, I'm going to move over to a different machine, to PySQL01. We're going to pretend PySQL01 is just a normal user. We're going to go and open up PySystem Explorer. When we open up PySystem Explorer for the first time, if during installation no one set an Asset Framework server, it'll ask you. So this was actually pre-installed on PySQL01, and it was just left blank during installation. There's no AF servers defined. Do we want to define one? Well, yes. Now here, I'm not going to put in the name of one of our AF servers. I'm going to put in the name of the network load balancer, which is PyAF. This PyAF is a network load balancer already configured in our network, and it forwards on requests on all of the Asset Framework related ports through to PySRV01 and PySRV02. So we're going to connect. Okay. It says the server at host address PyAF uses PySRV02. We're actually going to change that. We're going to rename our server. We can do this because we're an administrator, to PyAF. Okay. We're going to go OK here. We're connected to PyAF/development. Now, all the users in our network, we would install the PySystem products on their machines and say that the default AF server is PyAF, not PySRV01 or PySRV02. If you need to change this after the fact, you'd need to push out an update to users, and we'll reference documentation off to the side if that's the case. Now, let's take a look at PyDataArchive redundancy. Right now we have two independent data archives, one on PySRV01 and one on PySRV02. The one on PySRV01 already has data in it. We want to keep that. We want to copy it over and then keep them in sync. We'll use a tool called Collective Manager to do this. So on PySRV01, we're going to run Collective Manager, go on Start, go down to PySystem, and run PyCollective Manager. Collective Manager doesn't need to be run on what's going to become the primary server, but you can't run it on the secondary. You have to run it from either the primary or a remote machine when you're declaring your collective. So let's first off go File, Connections. Before we make a collective, we need to be able to connect to both data archives as they are right now. We can connect to PySRV01 because we're locally on that machine. Let's add in, right-click on the white space, add server, PySRV02, and OK. Error. We can't connect. This is because we're not allowed to connect. PySRV02 is just a base installation of Py. It only lets in local connections. We're going to have to allow ourselves in. let's go to PySIV02, open up System Management Tools. Now we're going to let our administrator account in. So we're going to go into Security, Mappings and Trusts. We're going to make a mapping similar to what we have on PySIV01. This will just be temporary. All the configuration for security will be copied over from the primary once we declare the collective anyway. But we're going to map PySchoolStudent01. Let's check that name. Okay. To PyAdmins, which is our default group for PySystem administrators. Create. Okay. Now let's go back to PySIV01 and try and connect again. And we're in. So it looks like we connect with a account with administrator privileges. This is required for setting up the collective. Okay. We can close out this connection manager now. Now we can go File, Create New Collective. Now the first warning here is making us verify that we've backed up our server. Have we backed up our server? No. Let's do that now very quickly. I'm going to start up System Management Tools. I'm going to go into Operation and Backups. Looks like automatic backup hasn't been set up for this machine. Right here, if I see this in a production environment, this is something else that makes the hair on the back of my neck stand up. You're not doing backups. You need to be doing backups. Now, we're going to do a copy backup first up, and we're going to, I'm going to get you to, as an exercise after this, please configure automated backups just like in the basics course. We're going to make a copy backup, so backup now, and we're going to back everything up into the location. Let's say D drive, make a new folder called PyBackup. Now, if anything goes terribly wrong with our collective, at least we have a backup that we can recover from. And while this is backing up, look in the top left-hand corner. We have 2 servers available to us now. This is going to change a little bit when we make them into a collective, but if we want to, we can administer PySIV02 from here as well. Backup's complete. Okay, let's go and set up our collective. We've now verified our backups are valid. We can check this box. And next, it's asking us if we've verified that our interfaces are all using the buffer subsystem and the buffer subsystem is working. We have confirmed this in the last few videos, but just as a little bit of revision, I'm going to move over to our interface machine, open up the interface configuration utility, open up Buffer Manager through the Tools menu, and it looks like the event sent is going up. It's using buffering. We can expand this out and see that it's buffering to PySIV01. I've just verified my interfaces are buffering properly. So our server that's going to be the primary already has data. So it's an existing server that contains data. The primary server is going to be PySIV01. And the secondary server is going to be PySIV02. Now, if you forgot to add that in as the connections, there's this little ellipsis here, which lets you add in another server connection if you need to. Okay, we're going to click on Add, and PySIV02 is there. Note, both servers need to be the same PyDataArchive version. We're going to go next. It asks us which archives we'd like to copy across. We only have one archive, but if we had more than one, they'll all come up here. I'm going to select Next here. It's now asking us for a temporary backup location that it's going to use to copy over to the secondary. That's fine with me. and we'll go next. Okay, I think we're good. Now, the procedure it uses here is it stops the secondary server, backs up the primary, copies the backup across, and then applies it to the secondary, sets up synchronization, and then starts the secondary server again. You need to have administrator access to both PyData archives. You also need a few other privileges, mainly to copy files across from one server to the other. So you, as an administrator running this collective manager, you need fairly high privilege. Check the documentation for more details. One more note here is that it's copying over all of the archives. Normally, you can't copy an archive file between one data archive server and another one and expect it to work. The only circumstance in which it will work is if it's a backup and restore, or if it's a collective. Copying archives over only works if both PyData archives have exactly the same configuration. Looks like it's done. Let's click on Finish. And now let's test. So we'll close this out and we'll restart System Management Tools, close and reopen. And we see here we have a collective called PySRV01 with two members, PySRV01 and PySRV02. Okay, let's go into Data and Current Values. Let's search our tags, maybe for all of our interface tags. Select all and go OK. And there we go. Is that it? No. These are all the tags from PySRV01. Normal users, when they're connecting to the collective, they don't really know, well, they sort of know, but they don't really care which member they connect to. As administrators, we need to make sure we connect to both and check the status of both. Now check the box for the secondary. Now we have both selected. Click Tag Search. Search again. Select all and OK. Right, here we go. So now we can clearly see we have tags coming from both servers. We can click on the Update button. And we're looking good, aren't we? We're not looking good. Looks like the tags from our secondary server aren't updating, and they haven't updated since, well, I established the collective. We've got a problem here. Now, this is a little lesson that make sure you check both servers if you're doing a routine status check of your Pi system. You don't want to get into the situation where your secondary, you don't check it for weeks, if not months, if not years, and then suddenly when you need it, you realize it hasn't worked for a while and nobody noticed. That does tend to happen with secondaries. The Pi system's not switched off very often, and people don't notice that their secondaries weren't set up correctly. So here, ours isn't actually set up correctly. What could be wrong? How do we troubleshoot this? Let's look at the log files. I'm going to go down to Operation and Message Logs. I'll deselect our primary and then retrieve messages. Okay. So we're looking for messages that have something to do with our interface or our buffer, because it looks like it's not sending data. Well, here we go. We see unsuccessful login from our buffer subsystem, and the credentials used are PyInt01 local Pi interface, didn't we configure it to use the domain account when it connected? Well, we did for PySRv01. We said to the interface, whenever you connect to PySRv01, use domain credentials instead of your local ones. But we didn't do that for PySRv02. So there's one step we forgot, which is we need to set up that command key, command again, for PySRv02. And I'm going to leave that for you to do in the next exercise.